I got the legendary Coach Jimmy Johnson here. He's like a uncle to me. I have a couple uncles that I've known since I was a kid that happen to be great football players and coaches, and Jimmy's one. Jim, miss you, man. You're down in the Keys, huh?
I'm down in the Keys, trying to stay safe until I can get me a vaccine.
Yeah, man. Well, we're all holding out hope for that. And you got the virtual background. He's got the virtual Zoom background of a beautiful, idyllic, picturesque beach, when the irony is that he could walk outside and he'd have the same thing.
Yeah, the only thing is I wouldn't have internet outside.
Come on, Jimmy, get that shit taken care of, man. You got to have internet on the beach. Anyways, there's a lot going on in the NFL. We got the playoffs coming up. Is there a game you're most excited to see this weekend?
I'm interested in that Cleveland-Pittsburgh on the rematch.
Yeah.
Especially with some of their problems at Cleveland. But, that's a big rivalry anyway. And then, I always enjoy watching the Packers play because Aaron Rodgers is just such a great player. I love watching. Yeah. I love watching him play. He just does it so effortlessly. Yeah, he's really he's the best.
He is, man, and it's unbelievable. It's like maybe they'll draft a quarterback every year.
Keep him going.
Just keep him going. Hey, listen, if they don't give him the MVP, he might win 5 Super Bowls, because to me, he's at least my MVP. I don't know. For a while it was like Josh, and for a while it was Russ, and these guys are magnificent this year. And Pat, the whole time, it's like nobody's talking about Patrick Mahomes, but it's hard to give it to anybody else right now, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned Josh. Man, those Bills are playing good now.
Yes.
They're physical. They're making plays. They're playing defense. They're really playing well.
To me, the only thing that scares me at all in that matchup against the Colts is if Jonathan Taylor gets going,
right?
It could be more of an interesting game than you prefer. So we'll see what happens there. But you mentioned the Stefanski thing. The Browns, for a couple of reasons, have been very fascinating to me from a coaching and operations standpoint the last 2 weeks. Starting with last week, if you're a coach week 17, and and I don't know if this ever happened to you as a head coach, but you're getting ready to possibly play a team twice in 7 days. Do you, in week 17, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, hold things out of the game plan, think a week ahead? Can you live in that mode?
I think in their particular case, they had to do everything they could do to win the game.
Right.
And so I don't know that they were going to hold anything back. Right. But, I think having said that, they know each other so well. I think the team that takes a look at, where they have been hurt the most by the opponent, right. What have they done to take advantage of a weakness that we've got, and really identified that. I mean, it's easy for, the winners to say, hey, we're fine. We're going to just go out there and win it again.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times the team that lost, they actually correct their problems better than the team that won.
Right.
I think really these two teams know each other so well. I don't know if there are going to be any secrets.
Right.
I think it's going to come down to the same old things, Chris. You know this. Who protects the football? Who's able to run it? Who's able to get some explosive plays.
So how about this week with the news that came down today? Because this was a shock. It's almost like the football gods really do despise the Cleveland Browns. I mean, with COVID hitting their wide receiver room, which was a whole nother issue, and then nearly blowing that lead they had last week. And then this week, Kevin Stefanski, for me, but for my dollars, one of the 2 best coaches in the league, coach of the year this year, in my opinion. Yeah. So he's out. If we wake up, and this is one of your most important, what is it today? Tuesday. Tomorrow's your Wednesday day in the NFL. I mean, what do you do? What do you do in that building?
Chris, I think that the biggest thing is this year, all of the teams, in the offseason, in the preseason, throughout the year, all of them have gotten accustomed to working virtually.
Yeah.
They have spent a tremendous amount of time on the computer and doing their game plans and doing their preparation virtually. And so, it's almost like they're going to be in the coaching staff. They're going to be in the meeting room together.
Yeah.
And so they'll be able to put together their game plans and really take care of all that business because they've been doing it all year long. Now, as far as game day,
yes,
He's going to be turning over, I think, the head coaching duties to the special teams coach. And special teams coaches are usually, they deal with the whole team.
Right.
And so it's not going to be taking anything away from your offensive coordinator or your defensive coordinator. I guess Van Pelt will actually call the plays offensively. And so I think with the special teams coach being able to manage the game with timeouts, those type of momentum swings, whether or not they're going to go for it on fourth down, et cetera. And then on the special teams, I think he will be better equipped than maybe an offensive or defensive coordinator, and it's not going to take anything away from the offense and defense. So having said all that, I think they can do all of their game planning virtually. They'll be able to meet together virtually. And so they won't miss a lick as far as the preparation.
Right.
Game day, you'll have different play caller. You'll have a different decision maker, as far as the head coach.
Going to be interesting. I wonder if you were coaching and this happened to you, what would be the first thing that what's the first order of business game day wise, or just in general that you would be telling your assistant head coach, don't fuck this up. Don't get this thing right.
Yeah. Again, so many people really make such a big to do about the play caller or who's calling defenses on game day.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you know, 99% of that is already scripted out throughout the week.
Yep.
They've gone through all the different scenarios, 20-yard line, third down and 3, 20-yard line, third down and 1, fourth down, best calls, 2-point plays, and listed them in order. All these things, it's on the sheet.
Yeah.
And as long as they do a good job of putting it together throughout the week, which they will do, then, Van Pelt, he just got to look at his sheet and go through the calls.
Yeah.
And so it's not as much a shooting from the hip type thing as what some fans may think.
Some people think. Yeah. The game management stuff, the special teams coach has to be on it, when and where to use your timeouts, that sort of thing. Right. Challenge flags. That's a totally new thing.
And I think the special teams coach, I think he's the one that's best prepared for that.
Yeah.
Because he deals with a lot of the time management anyway.
Yes.
And timeouts. So the special teams coach is the guy that really should be able to manage the game. I don't know their special teams coach that well, but if he's been in the league long enough, he should be fine.
Absolutely. How about the speaking of timeouts? Okay, Mike McCarthy made some news with the timeouts. Well, he had me up out of my seat because I'm thinking to myself, that the challenge, the game management is what we're talking about. The challenge situation on Sunday, I was up out of my seat thinking about, that's 10 yards or whatever it was. That's the difference between.
It was 10 yards, and they would have punted the ball had he challenged, and they would have called it incomplete. That was a game winner or game loser, and you got to challenge that call. And I don't know who he had in the box looking at it. I don't know. I know he was looking up the big screen trying to make a decision. So somebody dropped the ball there. Not only the receiver, but also the coaching staff. And that should have been challenged. It should have been overturned. And New York would have punted the football, and Dallas would have won the game.
So how much of it this year? Because obviously you can't foresee the Dak thing, right. And you can't foresee that you're not going to have an offseason or OTAs to put things in and work with your players and get to know them. The defense, that's not Mike. The defense was abhorrent. I've never seen run fits early in the year as bad as those. Right. How much of it is really, he's the head coach, but coming into next year with how things are in Dallas, what's the atmosphere going to be for him?
Well, they still are a very talented team. Yeah. And I still feel like that they're the most talented team in that division.
Wow.
But obviously the injuries hurt them, but injuries hurt every team throughout the league.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of teams that were playing with third team quarterbacks. One team played a game without a quarterback.
Yeah.
And so
I know. I had the Broncos that week. Early in the week, I got the Broncos plus 6.5 or whatever it was. I was like, oh, Mile High, no brainer. They're going to play these guys tough.
You should have waited, just like your dad on our picks on Fox NFL Sunday. He waits until the last minute.
Yeah, I know.
You wait to see who's going to get ruled out.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things with Dallas, and I didn't realize that. I mean, I know they're talented, but you say they might be the most talented team in the division. It's just one of those things where the expectation's different there. Even if it's unrealistic, even if they haven't had the success since the guy I'm looking at right here, it's like it's still the expectations there, fair or unfair.
Well, they get so much publicity. There's so much visibility there with their players, with their team. You know how the fan base is. And so sometimes maybe some of their players are overrated just because they do get so much publicity. But I do believe if they can get that offensive line, back healthy, I don't know that some of them at their age are going to be as good as what they were. But getting Prescott back in there and somehow straightening out that defense. And I think they really made a mistake on the defense. They were playing pretty good with Rod Marinelli.
Yes.
And Richard, back with the secondary. They were a pretty good defensive football team. And they changed, went away from the 4-3, went to the 3-4. They had players playing out of position. And because they didn't have the off season, some of those players were grumbling that they didn't want to do some of the things that they were being asked to do. They felt like, they weren't really utilizing, their strength and what they've been doing in the past. And so looking back in hindsight, they probably should not have changed the scheme of defense. So it took them at least half the season to get to playing decent.
It was like watching preseason for half the year, and it was like one of the things off the bat, I'm so glad you said it, was what it looks like to me as a bunch of guys who are out of scheme and they're tweeners. They're not vertical. They're not reading. They're not quite playing a 3-4. They're not quite playing like a Tampa 2-9 technique deal. Like it just was – and guys did, and when your best players are guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, why are you not leaning into that? Why are you not leaning into his skill set? Why are you not, it's just guys are standing up that aren't supposed to be standing up. I don't know.
Yeah, Chris, I think on top of that, I think some of the players probably deep down resisted it.
Yeah.
Because you know how it is. I mean, you were a great pass rusher. You love to rush the passer. Yeah. And so if somebody said, hey, we want you dropping on 3rd down and 10.
Yeah, I'm not going to have a good attitude about it.
No, you're not.
I'll be a good soldier.
You're going to be grumbling a little bit. Wait a minute. I could have had a sack. Instead I'm out here in space trying to cover some wide receiver.
Who was the guy that you had to have that kind of conversation? Did you ever have to have a conversation like that with one of your star players that he would have to concede some things in his game for the greater good? Because the only time I've really had to do that so much, and players, we all complain, right? We all have a problem with everything we do, but was New England, and I knew that I was trading it for a ring. And in your situation, you were a destination to try to win. Now, free agency was different, but did you ever have to talk to a player and convince him to do something different?
Only time, and it really didn't make any difference because we'd only won one game. My first year in Dallas, we had just a bunch of rookies and Ragnauts, half of them. I mean, I was rotating them in and out trying to find players.
Yeah.
And we lost our starting running back. So I did take our fullback, Daryl Johnston, and normally he had been running into linebackers all year long.
Yeah.
He just pounded on people. I said, hey, you're going to run the football. You're going to be our starting tailback today.
That's amazing.
I think he gained about 60 or 70 yards against Green Bay.
Moose was a running back for a day.
But I know, but he actually liked that.
I'm sure he did. That's the reverse. That's like telling the guy who's been, curl flat his entire career, now go rush. Like it's the opposite. So
the only thing, Chris, after that game, I said, okay, you had your shot. You're never going to touch the ball again.
It's over.
Go back to blocking.
It's over. How about before we close the chapter on Mike? And again, I think incomplete is the grade because we need a whole year to see. Although I was kind of rooting for, in a weird way, them to slide in and then somehow play Green Bay, because that would have just been the drama bowl. How about if you guys had review back in the day, what's the biggest outcome change in your career? Was there one play that you would have thrown? If you have one, okay, Coach Jimmy Johnson has one red flag in his pocket for all time. Where are you throwing it?
Well, it would probably be the last game that I ever lost in Dallas. When we played Miami in the snow on Thanksgiving in Dallas, because, it was in the snow, my special teams coach, Joe Avizano, came up to me and said, hey, why don't we take one of our big guys and put him right there in the middle and try to block a field goal? And that's when he said Leon Litt. I said, well, that's a good idea. Well, Leon Litt hadn't been in any of the special teams meetings. Mm-hmm. So he had no idea rules, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And so, if I had to change one thing, I would not have put Leon at a moment's notice, day of the game, and the field goal block.
Oh, really?
And so we would have won that game because we were ahead. And that was at the end of the game. But that was, looking back on it, ironically, that's the last game I ever lost in Dallas. We went ahead and won the rest of the season and then won all the games to the Super Bowl. And really a crazy thing, the Dolphins did not win another game the rest of the year.
You know what? It's pretty cool when you can say, last game I lost, and then your last game was actually a win. That means you finished strong.